Capricorn, Capricorn, say this, and you'll never hear from them again. There's a phrase, a single sentence you can say to a Capricorn that will make them disappear from your life. Not immediately, not dramatically, but silently, completely. And, in a way, you'll never be able to reverse. It's not an obvious insult. It's not a clear betrayal. It might even seem harmless at the moment you say it. But for Capricorn, it's the end. It's the confirmation of something he always suspected. It's the trigger that activates an internal protocol he didn't even know he had. Complete shutdown. And the most interesting thing? Most people who say that phrase don't even realize what they've just done. They don't see Capricorn distancing themselves. Because they don't announce it. They don't explain it. They simply disappear. They respond to messages less and less frequently. They become less available. They build a distance that seems justified by 1,000 other reasons. But deep down, it was that phrase. That exact moment. If you have a Capricorn in your life, whether a partner, a friend, or a family member, you need to understand what we're about to reveal today. Because this isn't just a phrase. It's a key that unlocks a door Capricorn has kept locked for years. And when that door opens, what comes out isn't anger. It isn't resentment. It's something much worse, indifference. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to the channel, and leave a like so that more people can understand this invisible mechanism of Capricorn. Now tell me, have you ever seen someone walk away from you without explanation? Or have you ever been that person who disappeared? Leave a comment below. Because what you're about to discover here could completely change how you understand this sign. Let's begin. To understand why a specific phrase can make a Capricorn disappear, you first need to understand the central trait that defines their entire emotional experience. Capricorn lives with an internal system of emotional accounting. Let me explain what this means. From a very early age, Capricorn develops a way of measuring value in relationships. It's not conscious. It's not calculating in a cruel sense. But it's as if there's an invisible scale where they constantly weigh. How much am I giving versus how much am I receiving? How much effort have I put in versus how much has that been recognized? How many times have I shown up versus how many times have others shown up for me? This system doesn't arise from nothing. It's an adaptive response to early experiences where Capricorn learned that love is not guaranteed. People stay as long as you're useful. Affection comes with expectations. If you stop giving, people stop staying. So Capricorn creates this mental record. He remembers every time he showed up for someone at 3 a.m., every problem he solved, every piece of advice he gave, every sacrifice he made. And he also remembers, with painful precision, every time he needed someone and no one was there. Every time he asked for something small and was ignored. Every time he made himself vulnerable and it was minimized. Now here's what's important to understand. Capricorn isn't keeping this record to charge anyone, and he's not holding it in to throw it in people's faces. In fact, he rarely verbalizes any imbalance he perceives. He simply observes. He notices. He files it away. And here's where things start to get complicated. Capricorn has an uncanny ability to forgive temporary imbalances. He understands that people go through phases. That everyone has difficult times. That it's not always possible to be present. So he gives chances. He waits. He keeps giving, even when he's not receiving, because he believes, or wants to believe, that the balance will eventually even out. But there is a breaking point. A moment when the balance becomes so skewed that it can no longer be ignored. And when that moment arrives, it's not dramatic. Capricorn doesn't explode. He doesn't issue ultimatums. He doesn't demand explanations. He simply makes a silent decision. I invested too much here, and it's not worth it anymore. And when does Capricorn make that decision? It's irreversible. Because for them, this isn't an emotional decision. It's a practical one. It's about protecting future investments. It's about cutting losses. It's about recognizing that some resources, time, energy, attention, love, are finite, and they can no longer waste them where they aren't valued. So you see, this trait is seen as something positive at first. It's what makes Capricorn loyal. It's what makes them trustworthy. It's what makes them that friend who never abandons you, who always shows up, who's always there. But it's also what makes them the sign that most definitively distances itself when it decides it's over. And here's the first sign of internal conflict. Capricorn doesn't want to be like this. He doesn't want this mental accounting. He would like to love more freely, more spontaneously, more unconditionally. But he can't. Because every time he tries, every time he lowers his guard and invests without measuring, he ends up getting hurt. And each hurt reinforces the system. Each disappointment adds another line to the mental spreadsheet. It's as if Capricorn lives in a loop. He wants to trust, but trust exposes him. He wants to surrender, but surrender exhausts him. He wants to believe that people will reciprocate, but experience has taught him that this is rare. So he maintains the system. Because the system, at least, protects him. Even if that protection comes at the cost of never being able to truly relax in a relationship. Think of it as living with armor you can't take off. Yes, it protects you, but it also weighs you down. It also tires you out. It also separates you from people. And the longer you live with it, the harder it becomes to remember what it was like to live without it. And it is precisely this trait, this invisible system of emotional accounting, that makes a specific phrase so devastating. Because this phrase doesn't just attack the present moment. It invalidates the entire history, the entire record, all the investment that Capricorn has made. And when that happens, the decision is immediate. This person doesn't understand my value. Therefore, this person no longer deserves my investment. And so, Capricorn disappears. On the outside, Capricorn is the image of stability. They are the friend who never cancels plans. The partner who always keeps their promises. The colleague everyone trusts. When you look at a Capricorn, you see someone who has everything under control. Someone who doesn't need constant validation. Someone who is solid as a rock. And that's exactly what Capricorn wants you to see. Because showing anything different seems like a risk he can't take. But on the inside, Capricorn is constantly calculating, constantly measuring, constantly asking themselves, am I giving too much? Am I being valued? Does this person really care? Or am I just being convenient? Imagine experiencing every social interaction with a voice in the background asking questions. Was it me who reached out last time? How many times have I helped this person? When was the last time they did something for me without me asking? If I disappear, how long will it take for them to notice? It's exhausting. It's painful. But Capricorn has learned to live with it. He's learned to smile while mentally registering that he was the only one who remembered the birthday. He's learned to say, no need to thank me, while noticing that no one really thanked him. He's learned to show up for others while no one shows up for him, and keep that to himself, without complaining, without demanding anything in return. Because complaining would be admitting need, and admitting need would be admitting weakness. And for Capricorn, weakness is the quickest way to be discarded. So he maintains the image. He remains the reliable one, the strong one, the one who doesn't need anything. And people believe it. People truly believe that Capricorn is emotionally self-sufficient, that he doesn't care about these small things, that he's above these basic human needs for reciprocity and recognition. But he's not. Actually, Capricorn feels everything he notices, every little detail, every unanswered message, every unreturned invitation, every time he gave something and received no recognition. And he keeps it all, not out of malice, not out of resentment, but because it's the only way he knows to protect himself from investing too much in the wrong people. And here is the constant effort that no one sees. Capricorn needs to maintain this mental accounting without ever letting it show that it exists. Because if people knew he was measuring things, they would say he was calculating, that he was cold, that he didn't truly love. So he hides it. He pretends he doesn't care about these things. He acts as if everything is natural, spontaneous, without expectations. But inside he's tired. Tired of always being the one who's remembered. Always the one who plans. Always the one who shows up. Always the one who makes an effort. And never seeing that effort recognized, or worse, seeing that effort expected as if it were an obligation. People look at Capricorn and think, wow, he's so organized, so in control, it must be so easy for him. But it's not easy. Organization, for Capricorn, is not a natural gift. It's a survival mechanism. Control is not power. It's protection. And always being there for others isn't pure generosity. It's a desperate attempt to ensure that when he needs them, someone will be there. But does anyone care? Rarely. Because Capricorn has created such a convincing persona of self-sufficiency that people truly believe he doesn't need anything. And the more he maintains that persona, the more alone he becomes. Because nobody thinks to ask how he is. Nobody thinks to reciprocate. Nobody thinks that Capricorn, of all people, might be feeling invisible. And what about the silent emotional exhaustion? It's waking up every day and putting on a mask. It's smiling when you want to cry. It's showing up when you want to disappear. It's continuing to give when you have nothing left to give. It's living with the constant contradiction of wanting to be seen, but being afraid of what people will find if they really look. It's about maintaining relationships that you already know are unbalanced, because leaving them would mean admitting you made the wrong investment, that you cared too much, that you gave more than you should have. And for Capricorn, admitting that is admitting failure. It's admitting the system didn't work, that the accounting was wrong. So he continues. He endures. He hopes that maybe, just maybe, the scales will tip, that maybe the person will realize, that maybe the investment will be worthwhile in the end. But deep down he already knows. He already knows he won't balance things out. He already knows he's alone in this. He already knows that when he disappears, it will take a while for people to notice. And when they do notice, they'll assume he's busy, that he's okay, that he's always okay. Because Capricorn always seems to be doing well. At least, that's what the world sees. And it's precisely this invisibility of their effort, this lack of recognition of the weight they carry, that makes the phrase, that specific phrase, so devastating when it's finally uttered. If you're a Capricorn, you've experienced this. You distance yourself from someone. Silently, gradually, without confrontation. And months, sometimes years later, you look back and realize you did the exact same thing you did before. With different people, in different situations. But the pattern? Identical. Here's how it usually goes. You meet someone. You start investing in the relationship. You're loyal, present, consistent. You show up. You help. You genuinely care. And in the beginning, everything seems balanced. The person reciprocates. The person seems to value you. The person seems to be on the same level of investment as you. But then, slowly, you start to notice the little things. You were the last one to reach out 3 times in a row. You solved her problem last week, but when you mentioned you were going through something, she changed the subject. You remembered her important event, but she forgot yours. Little things. Things that anyone else would overlook. But you don't let it go. You register it. And you wait. Because maybe it's just a phase. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she hasn't noticed. So you keep giving. You keep showing up. You keep being the reliable one. And then it happens again. And again. And again. Until the balance is so skewed that you can no longer ignore it. But instead of talking about it, instead of confronting it, you simply start to distance yourself. You respond to messages with less enthusiasm. You become less available. You create distance. And here is the pattern. You don't announce your departure. You simply leave. And when the person finally notices and asks, hey, is everything all right? You say, yeah, I've just been busy. And technically it's true. You were busy. Busy protecting your heart from further imbalance. Busy cutting losses before they hurt more. But there's another, even more painful pattern. Relational decisions postponed until they become irreversible. Capricorn sees the signs. He knows when a relationship isn't working. He senses the imbalance growing. But he doesn't act. Not immediately. Because acting would mean admitting he invested poorly. That he gave more than he should have. That he cared about someone who didn't reciprocate in the same measure. So he postpones it. He gives it another chance. And another. And another. Until he passes the breaking point without realizing it. And when he finally acts, when he finally walks away, there's no going back. Because, for Capricorn, the decision to leave isn't emotional. It's mathematical. It's when the accounting is so unbalanced that there's no justification for continuing. And then there's the emotional cycle, which is even more insidious. Capricorn shuts down, feels guilty, tries to open up again, gets hurt, and shuts down even more. Do you recognize this? You have a moment where you decide, I'm going to stop measuring. I'm just going to love without expectations. And you try. You genuinely try. You allow yourself to be vulnerable. You share something real. You ask for something you need. And then crickets. Or worse, the person responds in a way that minimizes what you shared. And in that moment, you instantly regret it. You think, I shouldn't have opened up. I shouldn't have asked. I should have kept it to myself. And you shut down. But now you're even more closed off than before. Because you not only confirm that it's not safe to be vulnerable, you also prove to yourself that the system was right from the start. That measuring is necessary. That protecting is essential. That trusting is too risky. And so the cycle perpetuates itself. Capricorn wants deep connection, but is afraid of it. He wants to be seen, but hides. He wants unconditional love, but can't stop conditioning. And each failed attempt to break this pattern only reinforces the belief that the pattern exists for a good reason. There's also the feeling of always returning to the same place. Capricorns change cities, change jobs, change social circles. And yet, they find themselves in the same dynamics. Always being the reliable one. Always giving the most. Always being the one who remains invisible until they need something. And he starts to wonder, is it me? Do I attract these people? Is there something about me that makes people think they can use me? And these questions hurt. Because Capricorn doesn't want to believe that the problem is him. But he also can't ignore that the pattern repeats itself with such consistency that there has to be some common denominator. And the common denominator is this. Capricorns never set boundaries before becoming resentful for not having them respected. And he gives and gives and gives, hoping that people will realize on their own when it's too much. Hoping that people will naturally reciprocate. Hoping that balance will happen by osmosis. But it doesn't happen. And when it doesn't happen, Capricorn doesn't say, hey, I need you to show up more. He doesn't say, I feel invisible in this relationship. He doesn't communicate. He simply disappears and justifies it to himself by saying that if the person really cared, they would have noticed without him needing to say anything. And maybe she did, or maybe she had no idea there was a problem. But Capricorn will never know, because he's already decided. He's already closed the door. You've already added another person to the list of investments that weren't worth it. And the pattern continues. When these patterns repeat not for months, but for years, for decades, something fundamental changes in Capricorn. He stops believing that balanced relationships are possible. It's not that he becomes obviously cynical. It's not that he declares he no longer believes in love or friendship. But internally, a silent belief solidifies. In the end, I will always give more than I receive. And if I want to keep people in my life, I need to accept that. And this belief has devastating consequences for important decisions. Capricorn begins to choose relationships not based on who makes them happy, but on who is least likely to disappoint them. They choose the predictable partner instead of the passionate one. They choose superficial friendships instead of deep ones. Because deep means investment, and investment means risk. And risk means yet another potential disappointment that they don't have the energy to process. So over time, Capricorn's life becomes increasingly safe, controlled, predictable, but also increasingly empty. Because they've built so much protection around their heart that nothing can truly get in now. Not even the bad things, but not even the good things. He looks around and sees people living intensely, living with emotional risks, giving themselves over without restraint. And part of him wants that, desperately wants it. But the other part, the part that has been disappointed so many times, says, it's not worth it. You've already tried that. Remember how that ended? And Capricorn's relationship with stability becomes problematic. Because stability was supposed to be a good thing, something that brought peace. But for him, stability became synonymous with emotional stagnation. It became the excuse not to take risks. It became the reason why he is alone even when surrounded by people. He has a stable career, a tidy apartment, finances in order, everything in its place. But when he sits alone at night, he feels an emptiness that no material achievement can fill. Because deep down, he didn't just want stability. He wanted belonging. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be chosen not for what he does, but for who he is. But he never allowed himself to find out if that was possible. Because every time he approached that possibility, he walked away before finding out. He cut before being cut. He left before being abandoned. And now he has a lifetime of what-ifs that he will never be able to answer. And what about emotional exhaustion? It's no longer that temporary tiredness after a difficult period. It's a structural exhaustion. It's waking up already exhausted. It's feeling like you're living in permanent survival mode. It's the feeling that you've spent so much time protecting yourself that now you no longer know how to live any other way. Capricorn looks at the people they love without measuring and thinks, how do they do it? Where do they find that energy? What do they know that I don't? But he never asks. Because asking would be admitting that he doesn't have the answers. That this whole structure he's built might be wrong. That maybe the problem isn't the people. Maybe it's the system. And that possibility is too terrifying to consider. Because if the system is wrong, it means it has spent years, maybe decades, pushing away people who could have stayed, cutting off relationships that could have deepened, protecting itself from wounds that might never have happened. And how do you live with that possibility? How do you move on after realizing that you may have been the architect of your own loneliness? Capricorn's response? He doesn't think about it. He pushes it down. He distracts himself with work, with goals, with anything that keeps him too busy to feel. Because feeling means confronting. And confronting means changing. And changing means admitting he was wrong. And being wrong means that all the suffering was avoidable. And that's a truth too heavy to bear. So here it is. The phrase. The sentence that makes Capricorn disappear from your life forever. The one that touches the deepest point of all that invisible emotional accounting. Ready? You care too much about these things. Why don't you relax? Or variations. You take everything too seriously. It's not that deep. You're exaggerating. Why do you always need to analyze everything? It was just a joke. Why are you upset? To anyone else, this might seem like a casual comment. Well-intentioned advice. An attempt to lighten the mood. But to Capricorn, it's the invalidation of their entire emotional experience. It's saying that everything they feel, everything they register, everything they notice, it doesn't matter. Because what Capricorn hears when you say that isn't relax. What they hear is, all the details you notice that I ignore, you're wrong to notice them. All the effort you put into maintaining balanced relationships, it's a waste of time. All the mental records you keep of who shows up and who doesn't, you're crazy for having that. Everything you feel so deeply, that's an exaggeration. And at that moment, something within Capricorn dies. Not dramatically, not with tears, but with a cold, definitive clarity. That person will never understand how I work. And if they don't understand, they can't value me. And if they don't value me, there's no reason to continue investing here. And here's what's devastating. Capricorn won't tell you that you've crossed the line, that he won't explain why that phrase hurt. He won't give you a chance to apologize or clarify. Because for him, the fact that you said it already reveals everything he needs to know about how you see the world and how you see him. You see as superficial something that, for him, is profound. You see as exaggeration something that, for him, is legitimate protection. You see as paranoia something that, for him, is careful observation built up over years of disappointments. And Capricorn doesn't have the energy to educate you. They don't have the energy to convince you that your feelings are valid. Because they've spent their whole lives trying to convince themselves of that. And when someone they've invested in, someone they've trusted, someone they've let in a little, When that person suggests they're wrong for feeling what they feel. It's the end. It's as if all that mental accounting he kept of you, every time he showed up, every time he cared, every time he noticed the little details, was suddenly erased, invalidated, declared irrelevant. And with it, you become irrelevant too. Not because Capricorn is cruel, but because he can't afford to invest in someone who doesn't value the currency he uses to love. He loves through attention to detail, through consistency, through remembering, through showing up. And when you say you care too much, you're saying your way of loving is wrong. And Capricorn won't argue. He won't try to convince you. He'll simply cross you off the list. And you'll become just another person on the list of investments that didn't pay off. More proof that the system was right. More reason to never let your guard down again. Capricorn, I know you're reading this and thinking about all the times someone has said something like this to you. All the times your feelings were minimized. All the times you were made to feel irrational for noticing what you notice. And I need you to know, you're not wrong that you're not much. You're not over the top. You just see things that other people choose to ignore. And that's not a weakness. It's a different way of navigating the world. It's a different way of protecting your heart. But I also need to tell you, not everyone who says that phrase is trying to invalidate you. Sometimes people genuinely can't understand why something that seems small to them is big to you. And instead of letting it go, maybe it's worth trying to explain. Just once. Only once. But I know you probably won't. Because explaining seems too risky. It seems too revealing. It seems like giving yourself another chance to be disappointed. And you've had enough disappointments already. So what do we do with this? How does a Capricorn live knowing there's a phrase that could make them disappear? And how do the people around Capricorn navigate this without stepping on that emotional landmine? Let's start with you, Capricorn. First, acknowledge that your emotional accounting system exists. Stop pretending you're not measuring. Stop being ashamed of noticing imbalances. That doesn't make you calculating. That makes you human. That makes you someone who has learned to protect themselves. And there's no shame in that. But also acknowledge that not everyone uses the same metrics as you. Some people show love through words. Others through time. Others through acts of service. And just because someone isn't showing it, the way you recognize her doesn't mean she isn't showing it. Second, experiment with communicating before you disappear. I know this seems impossible. I know it seems like too much of a risk. But consider this. If you're going to disappear anyway, what do you have to lose by trying to speak up first? It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be simple. Hey, when you said that, it made me feel like my feelings weren't valid. And that hurt. See what happens. Maybe the person had no idea. Maybe they apologize. Maybe they explain that it wasn't their intention. And if it wasn't, well, then you're even more certain of your decision to leave. Third, keep in mind that not every relationship needs to be perfectly balanced all the time to be worthwhile. That I know this goes against your whole system. But think about it. There are times when you need people more. And there are times when people need you more. And that's normal. That's human. That's the natural flow of relationships. The problem isn't the accounting. The problem is when you close the books too early. When you look at a bad quarter and decide the entire investment was a mistake. Maybe some relationships need more time to show their value. Maybe some people will show up in ways you're not measuring. And for those of you who have a Capricorn in your life, understand that when Capricorn shares something that bothers them, it's not superficial, but he doesn't talk about just anything. So if he's talking, it's because it's important. And your response at that moment will determine whether he continues sharing or shuts down forever. So instead of minimizing it, try curiosity. Help me understand why this affects you. I didn't see it that way, but I want to understand how you see it. What does this mean to you? Acknowledge the effort that Capricorn puts into the relationship, that he doesn't need grand compliments. But he needs to know that you notice. A simple "I saw that you remembered that" thank you can mean more to a Capricorn than you imagine. And above all, don't assume Capricorn is okay just because they seem okay. He's learned how to appear okay. He's a master at it. but to truly ask, to persist when he says, "I'm fine," to show that you're willing to see beyond the armor. That can make all the difference. There are no guarantees. Sometimes the damage is already done. Sometimes Capricorn has already decided. And when they decide, they rarely go back on it. But before crossing the point of no return, there is room for understanding. There is room for communication. There is room to try. The question is, will anyone be brave enough to occupy that space? So now I want to know from you, what was the phrase that made you disappear from someone's life? Or what was the phrase that made someone disappear from yours? For Capricorns, have you ever heard you care too much and simply shut down? Have you ever distanced yourself from someone and they didn't even notice what happened? At what point did you realize you were repeating this pattern? And for those who have Capricorn in their lives, have you ever lost someone of this sign without understanding why? Have you ever said something that seemed harmless but caused the person to completely shut down? Leave a comment. Tell your story. Because maybe someone here needs to understand that they're not alone in this pattern. And maybe someone needs to hear that there is a way out of it. Backhand index pointing right. If this video touched on something real, share it with someone who needs to understand this. Leave a like so more people can find this message. And subscribe to the channel because we're going to continue exploring these invisible mechanisms that shape how we love and how we lose. In the next video, we'll talk about Capricorn, how to return from a point of no return, because yes, sometimes it's possible. Sometimes it's worth trying to recover what was lost. And we're going to explore exactly how to do that without seeming weak or desperate. See you there. And Capricorn, the way you love isn't wrong. It's just different. And different doesn't mean less valid. You just need to find people who understand your language and who are willing to speak it with you.